the CEO. As the board chair really determines the culture of the board, the CEO really determines the culture of the organization and really serves as sort of what I call the chief values officer. What are the values of the organization that get played out? And that's primarily the responsibility of the CEO. The CEO acts as a spokesman for the company and really in the sense of the CEO painting the picture of the organization. What is the vision of the opera company and how is that carried out? That's the responsibility in the purview of the CEO. Next slide. The CEO reviews and assesses the performance of the Chief Development Officer and really brings in the resources, the human and financial resources. And I love our panel to kind of talk about this. John Sexton is the president of New York University. For many years, he served as the dean of NYU. Probably recognized as one of the greatest deans of the 20th century. He was a visionary dean. I remember visiting with John right after he was appointed as president of New York University. And John said, I evaluate my time based on three things. He goes, my primary responsibility as the president of New York University is to bring in resources, financial resources and human resources. The other part of my job is the general management and the oversight of the university. But he said, my primary job is to develop the resources. The financial resources, bringing in the financial resources, but also the human resources. And I think this is incredibly important and really is the role of the CEO. And for opera companies, the human resources are other senior managers within the company. It's key staff positions. It's working directly with the artistic director or the music director, casting decisions, and making sure you're bringing in the human resources. But it's this whole sense that the CEOs, their primary responsibility is bringing in the human and financial resources to the company. And would love for Greg and Carol for you to give any thoughts on that.
I think hopefully that the side of human resources slowly but surely takes less and less time, because hopefully as you build your human resources, those are people that stay. They're also hopefully people that, as your company grows, your human resources can grow, and you have more opportunities for people to move within the organization. So I think what I have always found is that mix of working on human resources and working on financial resources and managing the actual organization is constantly shifting. It's never a third and a third and a third. Sometimes it's half on human resources and the other part is split up in different ways. And I think that's part of what the challenge is that they're always moving pieces in some way.
Well, and I think one of the most important human resources that I think we spend most of our time on, or hopefully a lot of our time on, honestly, is the board and the board chair, for that matter. Because the criteria of who you have on your board, the makeup of your board, and your board chair and the resources they bring with them. Because to some extent, you look at what is the extension of the board chair? What do they bring with them? What skill sets do they bring with them? And what, for that matter, what Rolodex do they bring with them? And what contacts do they have? Because, as we all know, it's all about personal relationships and 6 degrees of separation. You have to find a way to shorten that 6 degrees so that you have contact with the individuals that you need to have contact with as far as fundraising is concerned, and that you have the skill sets on your board that you need to advise you in a way that you need to advise.
We're going to briefly talk about what I think are really 7 keys to major gift fundraising success. The first one is kind of self-evident, but it's asking. Most organizations don't have enough money because we don't ask enough and we don't ask for enough. We don't ask enough people and we don't ask for enough money. Of course, there are some exceptions, but in general, almost every organization could do a better job of asking more people for support and asking for larger amounts of support, really going out and sharing the vision. The second key, I think, is really work. And this is sort of a key to professional success. You know, most of us know exactly what we need to do to be successful. Whether we're fundraisers or CEOs or board chairs or volunteers or in our business life. It's amazing how few people actually work smart enough and hard enough to achieve success. I mean, the key to success in life is being able to come, get to the office early, work really smart, really hard, go home, get whatever you need to do to be able to recharge your battery, and come back the next morning with the energy, enthusiasm, and the focus to be able to really do the work that you do. Curious. I think people who are successful, I think organizations who are successful at major gift fundraising are curious by nature. I mean, part of the reason I love doing development work is I love figuring out what makes people tick. You know, everybody is so quirky and so different. Everybody has preferences. I'm always interested, you know, when somebody gives, one of my board members gives a really large gift to another organization, my first thinking is, God, why did they do that? My second reaction, my second reaction is, man, that's fantastic, especially if they haven't given a big gift to us, because then they've already learned how to give money away. Now the question is whether or not we'll ever be important enough, or whether we're a priority. But if I don't have, the hardest thing for us to do as a fundraiser is teach somebody to give away a lot of money. If they've already learned that, then I've got a fighting chance. And so I'm always curious about, well, why is somebody, you know, somebody's been coming for 20 years to the opera, but they're not donating to us. They love our product, but why aren't they donating? I don't know. I wonder why. I'm always interested in somebody, oh God, they just drove up in a Bentley. Why? Do they like Bentleys? Do they have a lot of money? You know, I mean, so people who are naturally curious, I think, are organizations that are curious about people in our midst are really great fundraisers. Having a sense of urgency to what we do. I think the money we raise is incredibly important, but we'll never be successful in major gift fundraising unless we can transfer the importance to a sense of urgency. In other words, it's really incredibly important that we do a new production, a brand new production of Traviata. And this is why we need to do it now. You know, because our case for support can be really important, but unless it's urgent, unless I can make a powerful case of why I need your money this month, the next 6 months, I need your gift within the next year, people tend to hold off. So bringing a sense of urgency to really what we do. Focus, focus, focus. Our organization, we have more prospects. Every company I ever know, we have more prospects than we have people to talk to people. Our real big challenge is how do we convert all of the people who come to our performances, our subscriber family, our ticket buying family, into our donor family. And so we have hundreds or thousands of people that we know are interested in our product but haven't become donors. How do we focus our time? How do we focus on those gifts that will make the biggest difference? That's what we're going to talk about. Thanking and stewardship, incredibly important. I don't know anybody ever have any donors that say, stop thanking me, I'm sick of it. You know what, you thank me too much, I'm tired of you guys, I'm leaving you, I'm going to another organization. It never happens. And stewardship is probably the area in major gifts in the whole fundraising cycle that we're going to talk about. That's probably the least focused on, and probably the most important. Letting people know what you did with their gifts, showing people the impact that their gifts make to our organization. And if I haven't mentioned it before, asking. Right? You know, we have to ask more people. We have to be more inclusive. We have to be able to share our vision.
I just want to make a comment on the urgency part, as we're talking about the roles of each of the different disciplines up here, the chair and the development person and the CEO. It would be my thought that it's the CEO's responsibility to make the case, as you said, of explaining why is this urgent? Why is now the time when we need this particular gift to accomplish this particular task or this particular production? And that part of my job as the CEO and the spokesperson is to help make that case, to then give the tools to the chairperson or to the development person so that they can then have the tools they need to say what they need to say to get the ask in.
And we're going to spend a little time just talking about the fundraising cycle and the involvement. Everything, and this is rather simplistic, and there's lots of can be other steps or sort of sub-steps in the process, but basically the identification, cultivation, solicitation, and stewardship of individuals. In all four of these areas, your development professionals, your board chair, your board leadership, and the CEO are all involved in different aspects of participation in the fundraising cycle. And so we want to talk a little bit about that. The next slide. We're going to go through each of these areas, the identification, cultivation, solicitation, and stewardship, and sort of flesh out some of the roles of each of these three folks in this. Identification, the board chair, what's especially helpful is what are the professional and personal contacts that the board chair has. Those contacts that they have that they might be able to introduce people to the opera. It could be people who are already a part of the opera family, that they do business with, that they work with, that they're familiar with. It could be people outside, other people they know from other organizations or from their personal life. A key role of the CEO in prospect identification is who are you meeting out in the community? And I think that's really key because our CEOs are so involved in many different aspects of the community. You know, going to different events, serving on other boards, interacting with different people, and being able to get simply for them to download and have the process of, you know what, I was at a cocktail party the other night, and I talked to somebody who used to subscribe that gave me their card and said, you know what, I really want to get back involved with the opera. That's part of the process that we do on a weekly basis, is just downloading my CEO, downloading the information dump about who did you see at a performance, who have you run into, who have you talked to, who's sending you emails, give me all the letters that, you know, people are sending saying they love the production, the same letters from different people who said they hated the production. You know, I mean, who are the people, you know, you're interacting with? And then really for the development professional and prospect identification, the key is research. And basically, you know, if you're looking at our most reliable pool of prospects, and I'm talking about individuals, really comes down to two things. And there's only two ways our organizations can raise more money. We have to raise more money from people who are already supporting us, and we have to raise money from people who are not supporting us. And our key strategies is basically an upgrade strategy. People who are already supporting the opera, how can we enhance their experience and ask them to contribute even more money to our cause? Or, you know, our great subscriber base, or people who are single tickets or multiple single ticket buyers, people who are not subscribing, you know, how can we identify these people and get them, migrate them from part of our subscriber audience, you know, into our donor family? And so that's where, you know, development folks spend lots of time on the prospect identification. In other words, who is within sort of our known family, but they're not donating? And I think that's the great challenge of our work. You know, somebody who's been coming for 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years, and we see them all the time, and they're not donating, it drives me crazy. You know, but why? If we've done our research and we know they have capacity, you know, they can financially afford to support us, and we know they like our product because they come every year, you know, we've determined it's the personal interaction. You know, the things that we've tried before, the direct mail, the telephone, they've kind of become immune because after somebody coming to the opera 10 or 15 years and not supporting us, I don't know about you guys, I don't know if I can write a good enough letter to convince them to start donating. Because, you know, by that time they've gotten 20 or 30 letters. We've tried calling them endlessly enough times. They're immune to those mass market approaches, so the only thing that's going to work is going to be to see my smiling face in front of them. And that might not work, but at least we'll know.
Do you ever ask
at least we can qualify, right?
Do you ever ask them to say, you know, you've been coming to the opera for 15 years, and we love seeing your face and having your subscription every year, but you've never chosen to make a contribution. Can you tell me why?
A lot of folks is that, well, you know what, I haven't been asked. Because so many people now consider that, you know, getting a letter through the mail or getting a telephone call, that's not really asking. You know, it's just mail. You know, it's mail from the opera. You know, those guys at the opera, they're sending me stuff. But, you know, no one's ever really asking for money. You know, and so it's part of that, and that's why, you know, going back is being able to focus on folks, because we have so many prospects in such little time and such little staff to be able to do that, is to really focus on those folks where we can have really direct conversations. But, you know, I feel really good, even if somebody isn't going to give me money, if we can qualify them, if we can really determine their interests, saying, you know what, I love the opera and I enjoy coming, but, you know, I just don't really contribute. I don't donate to other organizations, and, you know, I'll keep coming and subscribing, but I really just don't feel comfortable giving money. Well, at least they save us some time, because we don't have to do the dance. You know, we do the cultivation dance.
Kind of in the same light that both of you are talking about right now. Have you ever tried, or do any of the people around in the audience try asking people, if you were going to donate, what kinds of things would you be interested in supporting? Does that work? Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, it's a very good one.
Sure, I think that's it. Part of it is getting an initial visit and being able to talk to them and kind of what you need to learn or discover. We're going to cover that in a few slides about when you have an initial prospect visit, when you're meeting with somebody the first time, and you know they've been coming for 15 years, and it's like, you know, it's like, I got the appointment. You know, what do we have to learn? What is the critical information that we have to learn from them during that initial visit? In the cultivation area, you know, our board chair really engages prospects and donors in the life of the company. I mean, as the chief volunteer, as the head of the organization, they're actively involved, especially in the cultivation process. And I think one of the best ways for them to do that is to share their personal experience and passion. You know, at some point, people expect the CEO, they expect the development professionals to share their enthusiasm about the company, but I can't tell you how valuable it is when your board chair, when your board leadership, when your volunteers, when one volunteer or when one donor speaks to another donor to tell them about their passion and what involvement in the opera has meant to them. That's truly priceless. We can't, no matter how great I am as a staff member, I'll never be able to have that same feeling as a volunteer who generously gives their time and talent to the organization, being able to share that same information. The CEO really brings meaning and significance to the experience, and this is what we were talking about really sharing the vision. You know, sharing, laying out the roadmap. This is the vision of the company. This is where we're going. This is how your participation can really make a difference in the life of the company. And for the development professional in cultivation, while the development professionals are really involved in sharing that same vision and sharing that same sense of inclusion and inviting people, we really kind of create, manage, and execute the moves. The moves in the sense of being able to be the principal strategist and the manager of the activity. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Next slide. The solicitation process. The chair, again, this is different organizations are different. And when you're talking about who is the best person to make the ask when you're going on a solicitation call, it depends on who, I think, it depends on who has the best relationship with that prospect. Oftentimes, sort of the ideal would be our board chair or our volunteer leader who's going on that call. The opportunity to invite somebody to participate and to also to share their story, to share what the opera meant to them and why they made it. The CEO can also make the ask, and many times, and also paints the picture. The development professional, really on many of these solicitation calls, my role is to be the recorder and the listener, and also to manage the follow-up on the steps. I want to make sure that during the process, you know, on a solicitation call, that I'm making really careful notes and looking at, totally focusing my attention on the prospect. Pick up things maybe that they're signaling with their body language, but they're not actually saying in person, and to make sure that all of the information is covered. And so I serve as a listener and a recorder of that process.
I have a question for Greg and Susan, as the CEOs of your organization. How much time do you spend, if you give a percentage, on development?
More than half.
More than half?
70%. I mean, because development isn't just fundraising. Development is developing relationships. It's many, many, many different things. And even though Greg is outlining here, the roles of each of these three entities, the lines get blurred a lot. I mean, and I think Greg can speak very highly about experience of what happens when the CEO is the development person. Tell your story.
Well, when I stepped up into the general manager position, I had to go through a search then to replace myself in that process, and it took about 6 months to identify that person. So for 6 months, I was doing both jobs. When that person didn't work out in that position and I had to start from scratch again, that was another 9 months of doing both jobs. So at that point, you really have to look at making a decision about where are you going to spend your time. I think that at that point goes then back to that bringing in the human resources, and that with great people in production, in artistic, in finance, a good board chairman in place, and so forth, I was able to then basically put 90% of my time, and the other 10% was done just managing the day-to-day operation of the organization. So, I agree with Carol in that I would say 70% if you put in all those other developmental sorts of your development resources of all kinds. You're focusing on how you develop a subscriber base with your marketing director. There's so many things that go into that. And I think we often forget that development starts with your single ticket buyer, then your subscriber, because a donor doesn't come in unless they've tasted your product. And so that's all part of the mix there.
And that's all ensuring that culture of philanthropy, which we all want, and actually have to have for us to be successful in our jobs.
And also, the smaller the organization, to be honest, the more reliant you become on your board chair, because you are wearing, as a CEO or as maybe the one and only full-time person at your organization, you have so many hats you're wearing already that you must have other resources to back you up. And that's when your board chair and the partnership between the CEO and the board chair becomes even more important, because you have to rely on them to be doing the identification and help with the solicitations and help with the cultivation and the stewardship. I mean, it becomes even more important in a smaller organization than it is in a larger organization.
Don't you think that the smaller the company, the more the board is the development department in some ways? And it's not just the board chair. You should be thinking about composing a board of people who really share your feelings about the obligation of philanthropy when you get engaged with a company, whatever size. But I think the board takes a very active role in the smaller company, or should.
Absolutely. And the more active they are in the development part, to me, the more important it is for the CEO to be sure that they have the tools. You have given them the right story to tell. You have given them the stats that they will need, so that they can make it compelling. Because the last thing you want, and we'll talk about this as well too, is the last thing you want is to go out and just do a shotgun approach, send your board chair out or a board member out and say, you need to go to talk to so-and-so about the company. Well, they may not know everything they need to know about the company. They don't have the tools they need to speak intelligently about what is going to engage this person. So then it becomes my responsibility to be sure they have the information they need.
Yeah, great point. The final areas of stewardship. The chair and the CEO jointly or at different points are active involvement. They provide oversight. They express appreciation in particular for gifts that have been given, and really are involved in some key and approving recognition. How we want to recognize donors, whether they be individuals or corporations or foundations. And the development professional spends most of their time creating and managing and really executing the reporting results of stewardship, whether that be from an endowment perspective, reporting on the results of how the endowment performed this year, whether it be doing stewardship after a performance, whether that be through performance reviews or reporting reporting about how a new production was received in the community, really that time. So, you know, there are two different things that we're going to do. Spend a couple of minutes on about what are, you know, in preparing to go out on development calls, some real practical things on an initial prospect meeting. This might be an initial meeting. It could be a subscriber who subscribed for many years, but this is an initial prospect meeting. What are sort of the roles? What do you need to do? And also we'll talk a little bit about solicitation. I think preparing the time agenda outcome. It's sort of a little bit what I did at the start of our session. I said, you know, we're going to spend about an hour together. We're going to look at the fundraising process, the roles of each of the different people involved in the process, talk about some of the ways we're going to be successful, and then the outcome is hopefully you'll be able to get one or two things you can take back to your company. I think when you're planning an initial visit with a prospect is to have that in mind. How much time are we going to spend? What is the agenda? What are we going to talk about? And what is the outcome? What is the critical information that we need to learn about prospects? And would love people's thoughts. When you're initially visiting with somebody, an initial prospect, what do you think is really critical to learn about them during the initial visit? First time you met with somebody. Anybody? Yeah.
What interests them in your particular company?
Yeah. Why are they interested in opera? Yeah. Who else?
How they got involved with that.
Yeah. Like what is their background?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if they were took violin lessons when they were a kid, were they a singer, were they involved in a church choir? I think with a couple, what's really important, and I love to do this, is my first question is, okay, who really loves opera? Who's the opera lover? Because that is so important for me to know right off the bat, because sometimes, you know, perceptions that, oh, more often than not, it might be the woman, or more often than not, or it might be the husband who actually serves, you know, maybe comes to events but doesn't bring their spouse, or it might be somebody with their partner. I really want to know. That's kind of important for me if I'm visiting with a couple. Okay, who's the opera lover? And I say it just like that. And when you say it like that, boy, you get a response. Something that's usually, oh, well, you know, she's, you know, I come, but, you know, but only to the short operas. You know, do you have any 45-minute operas? That's the best I've ever gotten on a call. You know what? I love that. You got 45-minute operas. So I want to know who's the opera lover.
I want to be sure that we also, we don't forget that we have in our arsenal things for people who don't love opera. Because I am a firm believer that calls should not be limited to those who love opera or attend your opera. That having an opera company in your community is much more valuable than just putting on shows at the theater. I mean, we must have in our arsenal, what is the economic impact that your company brings to this city? How does having a cultural environment in your city attract executives and corporations who want to headquarter there? What we do for education, the fact that the first thing that gets cut from education is the arts, and what the arts actually do in the development of a child, and how important it is that this company is we're bringing shows into your school to help your child's development so that they become a full-rounded person. I just want to, you know, that just because they're not an opera lover doesn't mean they're not a prospect. And we have to have things in our arsenal that speak to them.
I think to your point too, sometimes you need to sneak up on donors who think they don't like opera. where they're frightened of opera, or they think that they can only love opera if they love the ring cycle, or if they jump in the deep end. And we have such tremendous assets as opera companies for developing a love of the whole company, whether it's having cocktails in your costume shop, or using your young artist program to help people understand that you bring an element of education. I mean, I find that our patrons absolutely adore our young artists, and, you know, to bring them into their home and have them even sing a show tune, for heaven's sakes. But the reality is that not everybody comes to opera with a full knowledge, and so you have to help them understand that you are much more than just difficult words.
And to speak to that as well, I think that's where having having a really diversified board that really represents your community is so essential, because those are the people that they're going to have in their circle of friends in so many ways, that they're going to be able to bring into that exclusive event that gets them backstage and gets them that sort of once in a lifetime, you might say, experience. And it will, that's the catalyst for that. And I think that's where a really diverse board that really represents your corporate community, your major givers in the community, your major volunteers in the community, can really bring about those kinds of prospects to the mix.
Yeah, that's a great point, Greg. Also, for just to have a basic biographical sketch where you have personal and professional information, that's real helpful, because then you kind of start doing the connections. Do they work at a company where we have a board member who happens to be there, so they might know. I want to find out if they know of anybody who's in the opera family right now. Also, any history and involvement with the company, just to check hard copy records if they happen to have a file, if they come to special events, how long they subscribe, because that's very safe territory. So I see you come for 15 years or 5 years or however long. To check electronic files, if there's any, if you have a system where you keep contact reports, that's really helpful, knowing that something happened 5 years ago, and if you're going to have to address an issue or something like that. And this is unbelievably simple, but detailed directions on where they're going for the appointment. I made a mistake once, sending my CEO off to some god-awful place, and he just got back from 3 years ago trying to find this place. But simple things, especially if we're doing that for our board chair or my CEO, I want to make it real easy for them to be able to get where they're going. And so we take some time. It's like, this is where you're going to park, and this is where you're going, and especially, my board chair is not from Houston, or excuse me, my CEO is not from Houston, and trying to figure out a route that doesn't involve going on the freeway. It takes some time, but it's incredibly important, because it gives him the confidence, and also it makes it really easy just to do the logistical things about being able to get there and not get all stressed out trying to arrive for an appointment.
I think there's a question here.
Well, I actually, back on the question of questions you should ask, the question that Greg and I are having an amazing time with is, what other opera companies do you visit? Because there is no doubt that in that core of our universe are those people who go to multiple companies. And it tells us something, whether they go back from Denver to the Metropolitan, or they go to Santa Fe, do they come to LA, do they come, where is it? And it's yet more inside information, because there is a sense in which we do compete with another of those of us in this room. And if I know where else they're going, then I know what I want to specify about what makes Opera Colorado unique and special and precious.
Yeah, that's a good point. Another great question is, I call it the king for a day question, or queen for a day question. That if you're visiting with somebody, and especially this is great when there's a transition, like if either you're a new development professional, or there's a new board chair who's transitioning in, or a new CEO, where you just ask their advice, where you say, as the new chair of the board, we're looking at lots of different priorities. If you were in my shoes, what would you do to help the opera company? Or what do you think we really ought to focus on? If I'm on a call, and oftentimes people are like, well, I'm not really sure, I don't know. But if somebody has a really strong and definitive answer, I lock that away. I record that in a contact report. I put stars around that, in their donor file, because if somebody could do anything they wanted, if they were going to give you one piece of advice, and if they said, you know what, we have to impact more schools in our community. We have to do more educational programs. Or, you know what, I love opera, and we're only doing 2 productions a year. We need to have more opera in our community. Guess what? I'm probably going to ask them to help fund. If that's on the top of their mind, and if that's their real priority, I want to make sure I really focus on that, because that's a great thing to be able to follow up with them and ask them to fund. We've heard you. We want to do this. We need your help being able to do that. In preparing for a solicitation, it's just like preparing for a initial visit, the time, agenda, and outcome, the role of each person going on the visit. And depending on, it's rare that we'll have more than 2 people, but we might have 3 people going on solicitation, but it's usually 2. It's either myself and Anthony, it's myself and our board chair. It might be the CEO and the board chair going. What is the role of each person in that? Making sure you know the project and how much you're actually going to ask for. And critically important, who is making the ask? Who is the person who's actually going to ask somebody to make a financial commitment? That could be the board chair, it could be the CEO, but really kind of role-playing that scenarios on big asks. I think that's really important, just so everybody feels very comfortable in the process.
Are you going to give us some guidance on how to figure out the dollar amount?
Actually, no, but that wasn't the session, but I'd be happy to visit with you if you want to stay a few minutes.
Oh, okay.
Afterwards, part of the dollar amount really involves, the first part was, what's the project? And it could be everything from an annual gift, just somebody wanting to increase their annual support, somebody making an initial gift. By the time you get to solicitation, there's been some cultivation activity where you've sort of learned of their interests. You have done some research to try to find an ask range or what you think might be appropriate if this is an initial gift, or if it's somebody, one of your current donors, again, in consultation, in visiting with the development professional and visiting with other folks on the staff, what do we think, what do we think based on this project, what do we think is, quite honestly, from my perspective, when I evaluate, what is the biggest gift I probably feel comfortable asking for that I have a pretty good chance of getting? I don't know if y'all...
I would say the key to all that is research.
Yeah.
It's really understanding who you're going to go meet with, and hopefully, if you're going on that first solicitation, you've at least already, done some donor profiling on that individual to understand what their basic financial situations are, so that obviously if you're going in for a first meeting, you're not going to necessarily make the ask that day, but by the time you get to that ask meeting, you better know a lot about that donor, including their capacity to give, and that's going to give you a lot of the framework for going in and saying, if they've never given a $250,000 gift to anywhere, there's a good chance their capacity is not that big, and that you may not want to go in and ask for something that large, particularly if there's no financial statistics in what you've dug up that lead you to believe that they have that kind of expendable income. So that research is key to figuring out what you might want to ask for in the course of that meeting.
I want to go back to what Greg just said, is to when you get to the ask meeting, I think is a very important statement. Because if you look back on the development cycle that you saw, the circle that we saw earlier in the slides, sometimes we forget about the cultivation process. That your first meeting is not the meeting you're going to necessarily make the ask. And that communication between the chair and the CEO and the development person becomes very important about where are we with this particular person. Because they have to be ready. And so you're working together in relation, like the chair has seen them at a social event and hopefully has talked about the opera at that social event. And then you've seen them at a show. And the CEO has spoken with them at the show, and the development person has done the research of how much they have participated with the company at what point. And at some point, the three of you have to sit down and talk together and say, okay, do we feel like we are ready for us to have that ask meeting? So there's two important things. You can't ask before they're ready, but you also can't forget to have that meeting. I went through a period of time with our company where we did wonderful cultivation, but we didn't see any increases in dollars because, as Greg was saying, we forgot to ask. So it's kind of a balancing act and a communication act between the three departments, or the one department if you're playing all three roles, of when is the right time.
I think, go ahead.
I want to comment that I think the other thing about asking for the first time is the goal shouldn't be that particular ask. The goal should be a lifetime relationship. And no matter what the capacity of the donor, you have to respect that you're asking for the first time. And I don't feel that you can ask for your largest gift as your first ask, because there's a whole lot of stewardship that comes after that ask, and the need to, cultivation isn't a one-time event. You would like to see this individual or this couple be a part of your opera family for their lifetime. And over time, you'd like to have them give you increasing gifts every year. So I think it's respectful to think about that and to think about what is the goal of that first ask.
And I think this all speaks to the fact that process is the most important part of this. And in this current economy that we're in, where what we always want to have a sense of urgency even has a greater sense of urgency, we are so tempted to rush the process because we need those dollars. And I have to say, so often we spend so much time thinking about that end product, that gift that we're trying to get at, that we either rush the process or we ignore the process. Or you have a board member who is very enthusiastic about getting out there and helping you fundraise, but their idea of fundraising is just, I've identified something, I'm going to go make an ask, and there's no process to it. And then they come back downtrodden because they were not successful. And the reason they weren't successful is there was no strategy, there was no process, there was no strategy involved in that. So my advice is always, even though there's urgency, you have to take the time to do the process. Yeah.
And they'll be reluctant to go again because they were not successful the first time. So that's
bad experience.
That's exactly. That's exactly.
And when we advance to slide 7. Great. The next two slides are just from a development professional's point of view. How can I best support my chair and CEOs? And I think it's serving as the intelligence agent, making sure that I communicate information and make sure that they're well informed of all of the potential activity that we can do to really serve as the time and activity column, and that's really helping my CEO and my board chair balance their time between those different aspects of cultivation and solicitation and stewardship. To really maintain, to really focus on the calendar and the schedule. For example, one of the things I found is practically very helpful. I meet with my CEO every week, every Monday morning. We just have a standing meeting, and that's usually for about an hour to an hour and a half. That time is spent lining up the development activity for the week. So we literally go down and I prepare a calendar that says, these are the meetings that we have this week. These are issues that we have to handle. These are board members we have to get back with on certain questions that are raised. And I also use that time because, he's so busy. I use that time as actually working time. Okay, great. We've got to make 3 phone calls during this hour and a half that we're going to spend. We have to follow up on, we have to schedule a meeting. Our board chair's birthday is tomorrow, so I need you to call and make sure we say happy birthday, and I need you to do the following. That's sort of like no matter what happens during the week, we're going to have that hour and a half so we can prepare for the entire week of activity that we need to do.
Great.
What are the ways that the CEOs and board chairs can support their development professionals? One of the things is realizing the dual-way street that works between CEOs, board chairs, and development folks, where I'm either in one of these 2 modes or I'm getting one of these 2 modes, enacted on me. And it's all about, and this is probably uniquely Texan, I guess, calling it between kissing and kicking. The kissing part is the motivation. It's the support to be able to support incredibly busy, incredibly important people going out to do the work of development. And this kissing and kicking, fundraising is just not for wimps. It is hard work. It is intellectually, draining work because you're always on, because you're always reacting and feeding off other people in cultivation situations and solicitation situations. And so there's a reason, there's a reason that disciples were sent out 2 by 2. Because somebody to partner with you. You need help in doing that. And so sometimes realizing that my most effective role can be kissing sometimes, and sometimes it's the kicking part. Sometimes it's the accountability. We can't put this off. I know you don't want to call it. Look, I'll be here. I'm dialing the number. You know, they're going to answer. Oh, yeah.
My major gifts person just looked at me.
Getting enough time, of course, that's you know, the more time we get, the more effective we are. I mean, it's one of those things we focus on. Getting great feedback, you know, giving feedback to your development professional, saying, hey, this is what I need you to do to support me. This is what I need you to do to support not only the fundraising process, but me personally as my role as CEO, or as if I'm a volunteer, you know, when I'm not around the company, I have to have this information to be adequately prepared. You need to be really selfish about that, because it's like anything else. It's hard to mind read what somebody actually needs, and be really selfish about what you need to be really confident to go out and meet with people and ask people for money. Because that's my job, is to make sure that, you know, as a fundraising professional, how can we advance, how can I make it as easy for people as possible to do the work of fundraising, and to be really specific in all that. And also to be able to be willing to play in all of these areas. And we're going to talk about comfort level in a minute, but in the identification and cultivation and solicitation and stewardship, because, you know, there's great variety and there's great fun in being able to do that dance around the fundraising cycle. And it kind of varies the activity, because if the only thing you are doing is just going in and asking people for money, it's really dry, because you don't get the cultivation experience. You know, you don't get the experience about learning about why people love opera, or why they love our work in the community, and why they want to do it. You know, and I think from a fundraising perspective, I put up with all of the management headaches so I can be in front of the people I want to be in front of. That's what floats my boat. I mean, I love being in front of people talking about opera and talking about, you know, the work that we do. I mean, that's the great part of interacting with people and fundraising for individuals. We're going to quickly go through, we've got about 10 minutes or so left. We're quickly going to run through a whole series of issues. Your panelists, feel free to just chirp in on any of these. The relationship between the Chief Development Officer, the board chair, and the CEO is built in trust. That's the basis of all great relationships. Be really direct with people. You know, I love the fact that I can be really direct with my board chair, and they're willing to be coached in certain circumstances. I'm really glad that they're willing to be very direct with me and say, you know what, I'm not willing to do that. I can't do that right now. And we know we're all on the same team, but just being direct, and it clears away the fog of, God, I wonder how they're feeling about this. No, just be direct and tell them. Top priorities. What are the top priorities? And this is really, really key, because within the world of major gift fundraising, anything we ask money for is going to be good. You want to give money for productions? Great. You want to support our young artist training program? Fantastic. You know, you want to help us, you know, do school outreach programs? Oh, that's fantastic too. Making sure everybody's on the page of what are the top priorities? What should we go out and, you know, be asking for? And that's really, I mean, that leadership comes from the board chair and the CEO, as far as being able to, you know, what is the mission of our organization, and given a limited amount of time, what are we going to ask for? Managing expectations and goals. You know, how much money should we raise this year? You know, does everybody agree on how much money we should raise this year? You know?
Yeah, whatever it takes to balance the budget.
Yeah, that's how much we should raise. Yeah, the scientific approach is we're going to spend this much, and you go out and raise it. You know, but that's sometimes really challenging. You know, it's based on what do we think we can raise, what's the capacity, how much do we need to spend, and so being able to manage the expectations around what are the fundraising goals that we're all willing to sign up for. You know, I mean, that's a key issue. What is your comfort zone? I think this is critically important. There are some people, whether it's a CEO or a board chair or a development officer, that say, look, I am not comfortable participating in this area. There are some board chairs that say, look, I am not comfortable asking people for money. And I'm like, thank you so much for telling me. what your role in the solicitation process is. If you're willing to come to a solicitation, what I need you to do is to share your story, to share why you're passionate about the opera, to share why you give. I don't have to have you involved in the actually asking for the money, but it's really helpful if you're in the solicitation process to share what you are comfortable in doing. At the same time, sometimes the CEO is, I'm not comfortable with this type of cultivation work. My CEO, Anthony, hates talking to people over the telephone. Loves in person, loves at events, special events, all that. It's like picking up the phone, like it's death to him. So it's only those times that we're going to, we have to do that. Well, we'll do that. He feeds off the energy of the personal interaction. And it's just difficult to develop for him that esprit de corps of talking to people over the telephone. So we try to minimize that. But he feels comfortable enough in sharing it. This is my style, I can be most effective. Time, highest and best use. The more successful you are, the more of their time you'll need. From a development perspective, that's the great black hole of fundraising. The more money you raise, the more successful you are, it creates the vortex of needing more time and more involvement. And it's great because then you never have to worry at the end of the day, hey, what am I going to do tomorrow? I'm out of prospects. Who am I going to call on? No, it's like the more successful you are, the more opportunities it creates to be able to visit with even more people, to be able to talk to more folks. So the highest and best use, I want to make sure that my board chair and my CEO, I really am judicious in how I use them. I want to use them as much as humanly possible, but make sure it's on a prospect or on an ask where they uniquely can make a difference. I mean, I really try hard. Who else in the company can I interact with? Is there somebody else in the company, or is there somebody else who serves on the board? Is there another volunteer that I can have participate in cultivation activities or engaging donors and volunteers? And sometimes the only people that's really appropriate is the board chair and the CEO, but I really want to use their time to make sure that I'm not overusing and truly abusing their time to work with prospects that, anybody they interact with is high value. But again, it's a limited amount of time. There's so few people. I want to make sure I use them where they're high impact. Their time involved is really high impact. Next slide. Weaning it, seldom a recipe for success. I hate that. We would never go out and do a production without adequate rehearsal time or preparation time. You can't do fundraising the same way. You have to be prepared and you have to know what you're doing in order to be successful. No surprises. Let them know you're coming. This is just one of the things that I always, especially if I'm setting an appointment to talk to somebody or making a solicitation, I let them know that, we're going to come and ask you for money. We're going to talk to you about your financial support of the project. Because the last thing that I want to do for my CEO or board chair is that put them in front of a prospect where it's really uncomfortable. They didn't know they were going to be asked for money. I want to make sure that we avoid that. Give prospects and donors permission to say no. We did some sales training in Houston. We had some of our development professionals do some sales training, and this is one of the great things that came out of it. And that's truly kind of what Susan was talking about, the long-term relationship. If somebody's going to say no, or if a project isn't really right for them, I want to give them permission to say no. Where I'll talk to them and say, we want to visit with you, maybe to set up the appointment. We want to visit with you about a great project. We really want to be able to impact more schools and have our Offer to Go program a lot more active. And we want to visit with you about your financial support. It's something that you might be interested in, but if you're not, I hope you feel comfortable in telling me that. But if you are, we'd love to visit, and then we could talk about next steps. That automatically sets us in a position of not being a salesperson, because we've given them the permission to say no if they're not interested. And if somebody's really going to say no, I would rather get it on the front end than go through the entire cultivation process. And it really honors the relationship, giving people to say, this project just really isn't right for me right now. The last one here is the top 10, top 25, top 100. It's the big gifts, stupid. Again, big gifts can be anything for your organization. It could be $1,000. It could be $2,500. It could be $5,000. It could be $1 million. don't care if it's your top 5 gifts. The top 5 gifts you're going to get all year are disproportionately higher than anything else. And whether it's 5 gifts or 10 gifts or 25 or 100, that's where I want to spend most of my time. That's where I want my board chair to spend most of their time. That's where I want my CEO. And this is individual gifts, foundation gifts, corporations. Every year when we're putting together our budget, coming up with, how much money are we going to raise next year? That's always based on a pretty detailed analysis of what are the top gifts from our current donors, foundations, corporations, individuals, that we need next year to get. Those gifts are going to make up 25, 30%, 40% of our budget. That those are the absolute gifts we have to get in order to make our goals. And we obsess about that all year long. I mean, every week when we're looking at, okay, at the top 100, how many of those have we already got? At the beginning of the fiscal year, we don't have many of them because we just started. Every month, okay, we've got 15 out of our top 100. Then we add another 15 that become on the bottom. How do we do that? How do we start checking off? Because then no matter what, if you're focused on your top prospects, again, across the board, individuals, corporations, and foundations, no matter what else happens the rest of the year, you probably have the best chance of making your budget because you're spending your time on those gifts that make the most difference. Jen, why don't you go to the next to the last slide? There's some information about communicating the good, the bad, and the ugly, about some ideas, and you can look at your slides about information that's, don't be the best kept secret in town. You want to communicate great information. There's times when some things get kind of ugly in the development process. For example, poor stewardship, failing to walk the walk. Where somebody gives you a gift, and sometimes this happens not even on your watch. Somebody else's watch, it was an endowed fund to support productions, and I don't know, somehow the money got spent on staff salaries, and they didn't actually go to a production. Who knows? Things happen. I think it's critical to identify these areas early and as quickly as possible to have your volunteer leadership make sure that they know what's happening, and also your CEO. Because these are areas that get really ugly, because these impact those long-term relationships with donors that we want to do. Personality conflicts between board members and between the board and the staff involved in fundraising areas, when you have different board members soliciting each other, when you have the board and the staff, if you have key board members who are not getting along with your development professional, what do you do? How do you handle those things? And those are sort of critical areas. And then the last is really leadership transition. That can potentially be, I say ugly, but maybe sticky. How do you honor the inheritance? Everybody has an inheritance when they come into a company of either the work that a development professional did, or the board chair of an organization that somebody's taking over, or a new CEO. How do you honor that sometimes complicated inheritance that you get in issues regarding fundraising? Somebody upsetting lots of donors, and you're the new person in town, and kind of handling and preparing those relationships.